Neil. Any trouble on the home front? Huh?
I really don't think that's any of your concern.
You know, the finest line a man will walk is between success at work and success at home. I got a motto. Like your work, love your wife.
Well, I'll remember that. What's the flight situation?
Simple. There's no way on earth we're going to get out of here tonight. We'd have more luck playing pickup sticks with our butt cheeks than we will getting a flight out of here before daybreak.
I guess we'll find out soon enough.
Yeah, but by the time the airline cancels this flight, which they will sooner or later, you'd have more of a chance to find a three-legged ballerina than you would a hotel room.
You're saying I could be stuck in Wichita?
I'm saying you are stuck in Wichita.
Ladies and gentlemen, may I have your attention, please? I'm sorry to announce that we're canceling Flight 909 due to severe weather in Chicago.
Hi, I was wondering if you had any rooms available for tonight.
You have landed on The Substance, a podcast aimed at being biblical, thoughtful, and human. Join us each week as we engage the culture without the culture war. I'm your host, Trevor Aiken, and I'm joined today just by the one co-host.
Just the one co-host, actually.
Just the one co-host, Philip Marinello.
Hey, everybody.
And along with Philip, we have a special guest joining us this week, Luke T. Harrington. It's very important you get the T in there.
I was going to say, is there another Luke Harrington out there on the interwebs?
Do you want to go down that path right now?
Oh, you just stepped in it, Philip. You just stepped in it.
Why not? Oh, Trevor, are you already aware of this? Do you know?
Oh, yes. Did I tell you that I binged his podcast today?
It has come up on the show once or twice. So there are several Luke Harringtons out in the world.
Sure.
The only one with an IMDb page, however, is a porn star. And I am not a porn star.
Cool. Luke T. Harrington, not a porn star.
That's the tagline. That's on my business cards.
Yeah.
So Luke T. Harrington.
Additionally, round out the bio for him, Philip.
Yeah, Luke T. Harrington, award-winning novelist, best-selling humorist, dude with a podcast, and not
That's
a porn star.
Yes.
And was talking with Kevin when he suggested you. He said you got a film degree. Tell me about that.
So I have a film studies degree from the University of Nebraska at Lincoln, and that and $5 will get me a cup of coffee. That's about how useful it's been to me in my life. It was one of those. It was very, very much one of those. I was in college, pre 2008, before the economy just slid right off a cliff. So I had no conception of maybe I should major in something that would actually lead to a job. I was just this very wide-eyed, idealistic, I'm here to learn about important things and experience art or whatever,
What are my interests?
Exactly. I was one of those kids that almost majored in philosophy. That's where I'm coming from. Yeah. So, I started out undeclared, and then my freshman year I took a film class and I got like an A++ or whatever on my final project, and I was like, "Oh, film. That's what I should be doing with my life." So I got a degree in film studies, and then I graduated with that, and the economy tanked, and I ended up stranded in Tulsa, Oklahoma for 10 years. And finally, how much of my life story do you want to hear? But I never...
Not necessarily the place where you'd imagine a film degree would be of great help.
I did work as a freelance film critic for a while, briefly, just selling movie pieces to publications that would take them. But eventually I did kind of get, I don't know if this is the right thing to say on this podcast, but I did kind of get bored of movies just because so many movies are just kind of mediocre and you run out of things to say about mediocre movies.
A lot of them are not great.
Your boredom of movies is welcome here for sure.
Well, and when you're a critic,
you have to see
this is
everything.
a non-movie guy right here.
Yeah, when you're a critic, like part of me would go like, because I've thought about pursuing the freelance path, and like, and even with the podcast, sometimes like people will send us links to stuff, but it's nice with the podcast, we get to be choosy. But if I ever like signed up even as like a contractor for like I'll be a film critic for XYZ publication, they would just assign me stuff and be like, well, I don't want to watch. I don't care about that. That could kind of burn you out.
Yeah. Here we get to watch what we want to, or what Philip wants me to. If it's me.
I try to spread the picks around to a degree, but a lot of the substantive cinema picks have come from me. I will take that.
It is your forte, though. I mean, like, you're good at it, and you pick good stuff, and you pick challenging stuff. I'll be frank and upfront with the audience on this one that I was skeptical. I remain skeptical, and I'll tell you a little bit about my watch through experience on this. This is kind of a segment.
Well, that's funny because I remember you loving this when we were in like middle school. I remember you loving this movie.
Did I love this movie?
I feel like you did.
So, I mean, my memories of seeing this in middle school is very, very hazy. If that was the time that I saw it, even I don't even remember. I think it was probably the first R film that I ever saw as well. So looking back on its content, in my mind, it loomed like a way skeezier than
it's
it
like
was.
A PG-rated movie with one scene of profanity, pretty much.
Yeah, and like the skeezy taxi.
But I mean,
yeah, I guess technically there is nudity in this movie.
Right.
I didn't even see it.
Like the whole it's rated R for some F words, you know.
These are two middle-aged men who are wearing on each other's nerves.
Yeah.
Tell us about your arc.
Well, yeah, and so I realized last night, I was like, oh man, I still gotta watch this movie. And so kind of tired, kind of working late, I put it on, and I kind of start empathizing really heavily with Neil Page's character. Just having to work lots of hours, and just feeling like you want, like, it's almost like a nightmare. You want to get to be with your family, but everything in the universe conspiring against you to do that, and feeling maybe you're angry because you're punishing yourself, like, oh man, I shouldn't do this work stuff, I shouldn't be away from home, I shouldn't, all that kind of thing. And I don't know, it felt less comedic. Like, I could tell there was bits that were supposed to be funny, but I didn't laugh really at all.
I was gonna ask, did any of it, like, did you think it was funny?
The most anything landed was I went, huh, like once.
Wow.
Because there was I think that maybe the moment where they were all laughing at the car on fire, just because of just the abject futility of it all.
It can't get worse than this. Here we are.
Yeah.
What else are you gonna do?
Yeah, exactly.
Interesting. Well, I mean, it came out in the late 80s. I guess we could say spoiler warning. If this is not a Thanksgiving tradition of yours, if you've never seen it, we're going to talk about it.
Also, if the ending isn't completely obvious from like the onset of the film, what's going to happen? I don't know.
So spoiler warning. We do that for movies that the plot is important, but we will say if this is not a film you're familiar with and you care, there's like kind of one thing to be spoiled in this movie.
It's almost like a proto version of Napoleon Dynamite, but like more with a linear plot than Napoleon Dynamite, but like very much look at these people in this situation, kind of comedy based.
Interesting. Is that like off the cuff, or are you working on that? Is that like a theory of yours?
No, it's not a theory. Like, honestly, don't make it any more complex or of a take than it needs to be. Like,
I think it's anything
just
like
a random thought
Napoleon
that popped
Dynamite.
in my head while I was watching the film. I was like,
I think it's a very funny, like,
funny.
It's a very like tight script. It's like 90 minutes. And it's I thought it was very funny. Luke, is this one that's been like a tradition for you? What's your relationship previously with the film?
Okay, so do you want to hear the whole my life story as it applies to planes, trains, and automobiles?
You're here.
Okay, so
absolutely. Yep. I think our listeners are like, they better say yes to that.
I will say I've seen this movie 3 times. The third time being when I rewatched it for this recording session. First time was with my high school girlfriend at her house, and her parents weren't home, so there was probably more making out than actual movie watching involved. Am I allowed to say that on a Christian podcast? I'll say the first time I watched it, I was just kind of really almost shocked by just how kind of mean-spirited it was. We've seen this kind of I feel like it's riffing on a very established like vaudeville trope of like the odd couple, straight man and weirdo, and
sure.
I mean, that thing has been done in a lot of road comedies as well. But I feel like typically when you're talking about like a vaudeville odd couple duo, like Abbott and Costello or Laurel and Hardy or whoever, it's very slow burn, right? Like one guy will be extremely obnoxious, but the other guy, he's usually like a long suffering type who will just either just put up with it as long as he can, or else like the obnoxious guy just doesn't get that he's annoying him, and it'll be a slow burn to like maybe a blow up towards the end of the movie. And Planes, Trains, and Automobiles doesn't do that, interestingly. Like, yeah, Steve Martin's blow up, I think, happens like 20, 30 minutes into the movie. Yeah.
It's like 25 minutes in. Yeah.
It's like before they even go to sleep for the first night, like they know exactly how they feel about each other, which is very strange. And it's a movie that it seems completely uninterested in making either of the characters at all likable,
Yeah.
They're both kind of awful people in their own way.
These are the same thoughts I had.
That was my reaction to it the first time I watched it, which was when I was in high school. So this would have been, 2000-ish, right around the turn of the century. So about 10 or 15 years after it first came out.
This is your thoughts with distractions.
Yes, exactly. So I was like, why does anybody like this movie? That was kind of my take. And I watched it maybe 10 years. I watched it again maybe 10 years after that. And the only reason I watched it was because my wife was a floor nurse at a hospital at the time. So she had to work a lot of holidays. So I found myself home alone with nothing to do on Thanksgiving. And as far as I know, there are only like 3 movies about Thanksgiving in the world. And yeah, one of
pretty much.
So I did a Thanksgiving movie marathon. I watched Planes, Trains, and Automobiles and Pieces of April and Alice's Restaurant. Those were the 3 Thanksgiving movies I could think of. So rewatching it and kind of knowing what was coming, I appreciated it a lot more. I found it a lot funnier, knowing that I wasn't necessarily supposed to like these characters. I found it a lot easier to take. And I laughed at more of the jokes for sure. And I came out of it thinking, okay, I understand what people like about this movie. And then I rewatched it last week just for this conversation. And I don't know, I guess I ended up somewhere in between those 2 reactions. In a lot of ways, it is a very hard to take movie because the 2 characters are both just so obnoxious in such different ways, and it's like, should I be laughing or wincing right now? And I don't know. I guess that's a style of comedy that really got popular in the 2000s, but with stuff like The Office or whatever, but like Planes, Trains, and Automobiles maybe a little ahead of its time there.
Oof, yeah. The Office is rough.
Especially the early seasons.
So I'll say, my take is, I'll probably be on the other side. I don't know. When I was younger, I watched it because it was the thing. Like you said, there's only a couple of Thanksgiving movies, really. It was never like it wasn't like Die Hard or Muppets Christmas Carol where I watched it every year. But like I would watch it, and there were a couple, especially the Steve Martin blow up scene when you were younger. You're like, oh man, he cussed that lady out, ha ha ha. But like, I didn't really like get it. Like the obvious stuff, sure. Like I thought. Especially, I watched it last month just because I was like, I want to make sure that this is good, and I was like, okay, this is good. And then I watched it again this week for this. The scene with John Candy when he's driving the car, then he ends up going on the wrong side of the highway before the car sets on fire. I thought that was hilarious. I thought John Candy was hilarious in this movie.
Yeah, I was gonna say, like, as a kid, did you like resonate a lot with John Candy?
Me? Is that like?
No. Like with his kid, like with Dell, like were you like?
No.
I'm just saying, like Dell's like.
No.
Yeah, no.
He was a super nerd. No way. I didn't really resonate with either one. I just thought he was like a fat funny dope. Like he just made me laugh.
It really is. It's very much a movie about middle-aged men. And the whole time I was watching it, I was like, I don't think I can imagine anyone who's not a middle-aged man really relating to this movie. which is unusual. Like, they don't make a lot of movies for middle-aged men.
And I mean, I'm
Yeah.
not quite, I'm certainly not middle-aged, but like in my 30s watching it, I definitely laughed more than I did when I was a kid. But like it just it came off very humane. Both of these characters are characters that are going through their own pain, but their situations are funny sometimes. Like, it's grounded in reality. Like, John Hughes, not necessarily like a master filmmaker, but one of the things that I feel like audiences resonate with just about all of his movies, that they're about real people. Some of the situations are obviously exaggerated, but like you can picture yourself a degree or two of separation, like kind of going through these things. So like, it's kind of like, it's funny to watch somebody else go through these and not you. But I just felt like it was a very like, I don't know, like I felt for both of these men very much. And then just the funny stuff was funny, and the emotional beats hit a lot more. This stuff, like, I don't feel like the emotional bits ever really connect with me. I was just like, oh, okay.
Can I ask you guys something?
Yeah.
Are there people in the real world who are like, who really care this much about getting home for Thanksgiving?
Maybe.
Because that was one of the hang-ups I had the first time I watched it, that was keeping me kind of at arm's length from appreciating the movies. Like, I could maybe see someone like this obsessed about getting home for Christmas or something, but like Thanksgiving, it's a 4-day weekend.
Before,
like, who cares? You know?
I think it's the bigger get-together time, actually, with family. I think that is times where families get together more. And this is kind of a weird little anecdote, I'll say. I'm pretty sure more people like have big meals together. I work in the restoration industry, and Thanksgiving every year is the #1 day for house fires, because people are cooking who don't know what they're doing. The people who don't usually cook are cooking. They're having people over. They're lighting candles. They're having fires in the fireplace. It's house fires galore on Thanksgiving. But it's a big. I mean, Christmas is obviously the bigger commercial time, and it probably has a bigger cultural impact. But I remember a lot of Thanksgiving dinners with lots of people growing up.
I know for my family too, it's very similar. Like, Thanksgiving is, I think, mine and my wife's favorite holiday. And yeah, it's something that, I mean, Christmas, you tend to, because of the proximity to New Year's, you tend to have like, it feels like a little bit more time that people have to be together, to, like, it doesn't matter exactly what day it is, but like, especially now, like Thanksgiving getting squeezed by retail kind of on both sides. You know what I mean? Like, you really kind of just have that day. And I don't know, like, as I watched it, I almost felt it more as like a metaphor for, like, not a metaphor, I'm not trying to make this sound like highfalutin or anything, but like, it's almost bigger than just that. Like, it's like how his work and maybe I'm reading my own situation, but like how his work keeps him from his family and the things that he wants to be in, and like how his situation, because like you see him in his suit and his you know, the scene in the job at the beginning, and like, you know, the high power stuff, like,
hilarious. Made me laugh both times I watched it recently. That guy just jacking around, like wasting everybody's time.
And like, he says, let's reconvene in a couple of weeks after doing nothing.
Not funny.
Hilarious.
That was probably the least.
It's
funny
painful, but it's hilarious.
Yes. It hurt a lot. But yeah, just like his feeling of, you know, this just impending, like, I'm gonna miss this stuff with my family. And that moment when they're sitting in the diner and Del says, you know, those are the moments you don't get to see again. And like, to me, like, that is like, that's tragedy, you know, like,
it is.
He's right, you know, like that's that moment is gone, and you don't get it back. And he was trying, but like, there's these shots of his family, like, they just keep doing these like cuts to his family, like forlorn that he's not able to make it back. And it's almost there as like a jab, you know what I mean? Like, that's almost to answer like, why is his pursuit so radical? Because like, it's just, they're sitting there waiting for him and he's not making it, and like, and they're just disappointed by his absence.
Well, I mean, if you think about it, like, Christmas is something that most people observe regardless of religious affiliation, but like, Thanksgiving is something like, the spirit, quote unquote, of Thanksgiving is something that irreligious people, I feel like, is an easier sell of like, let's just get together and like appreciate one another and what we have. Like that's probably an easier, wider sell than Christmas, even though Christmas is pretty like commercialized in a lot of ways. But I mean, being together with your family, having people together, and I mean, in this case, at the end, like having a warm place that you can share with others, strangers, things like that. Like that's a universal thing, kind of regardless of one's religion or irreligion. So I'll say, I want to kind of get to some of the specifics of the film, but before we get into that, I shared with Trevor, this podcast is not a deep dive necessarily on the film itself, but I did check Box Office Mojo, and it's just kind of wild. It's a snapshot of a time that was a very different time than we're living in now. So they were smart enough. Obviously, they released it on Thanksgiving Day weekend. It was in the top 10 for 7 weeks in a row. This movie was in the top 10. So they carried them
all the way through the holiday season.
They crushed Thanksgiving. They crushed Christmas. They crushed New Year's. Like that's almost 2 months in the top 10 box office.
You didn't need a superhero in your movie.
How much less movies
make money?
Yes. Yeah, you just need two funny people. It's a super basic movie. It's 90 minutes. Like your mileage may vary. Like you either think it's funny or it's not. Like even the three of us, we're kind of divided on that. But it's something that I feel like families went and clearly went back to and brought other people to. There was even 1 week, I think it was the week after Christmas, like it jumped. Like it had a big splash when it first started. The next couple weeks were great. And then on Christmas, it like shot up a couple $1,000,000 again, like kind of wild. So it was a big hit when it initially hit. And because it's just kind of smart, I don't know, marketing, I guess, in general, like not a lot of Thanksgiving movies. Like it kind of became the Thanksgiving movie for a lot of people.
So I have a question, Phil. What is substantive about this film?
What is substantive? Well, I mean,
like this is substantive cinema. Like this is a substance. We talk about like the idea is something that matters. And I think there's stuff here for sure, especially reading the article you sent, but I want to hear your take on it. Like what made you think like, okay, this is substantive cinema?
Well, I mean, frankly, beyond just like we don't want to always capitalize on trends, but I mean, I forgot what we did last November, but it's an easy fit for November. Hopefully, like it's going to be an easy episode for all of our listeners to share with their friends and family. It'll be an easy listen. Hopefully we'll get some new people coming in on that, but actually substantive. I think just like I said, the characters, this is a very humane movie. And if we're speaking substantive from our point of view, I think that loving the stranger, loving the outcast. And obviously he didn't do a good job for most of the movie, but I think just the idea of like what we owe to our fellow man and like how we can treat them and how kindness, like you don't know what people are going through and how much like acts of kindness can mean to people. And I just think I would imagine that if people are watching this at all thoughtfully, you could have a lot of really good conversations afterwards. Like this would be a good like film club, like a seasonal film club movie, I think. No, I mean, I don't think it's a terribly deep film. It's not obviously as deep and thoughtful as some of the other films we've covered on here. But I mean, and I don't think the point of the film is to be didactic.
No.
But I do think it has just something to say about like how we treat each other.
I wanted to read a paragraph from this Roger Ebert article that you sent, which
he listed it as one of his great movies.
Great films.
I don't know how many of our listeners are familiar with that specific. So Roger Ebert, there's a certain, like he wrote reviews for decades, but then at a certain point he started a series just called Great Films, and this is one of the ones that made the cut.
Yeah. So in this review, it's very interesting. So I honestly felt like I enjoyed the movie review better than the movie.
I thought that might have been the case.
It's a very well written review. It's almost worth recommending the movie just to read the review. But I wanted to read this paragraph. He says, Dell, John Candy's character, we feel, was born with empathy. He instinctively identifies with Neil's problems. He's genuinely sorry to learn he stole his cab. He's quick to offer help when their flight is diverted to Wichita, Kansas, and there are no hotel rooms available. Neil, on the other hand, depends on his credit cards and self-reliance. He wants to make his own plans, book his own room, rent his own car. He spends the movie trying to peel off from Del and failing. Del spends the movie having his feelings hurt and then coming through for Neil anyway. I have interactions with that paragraph, but I'd love to hear y'all's interactions as well. Like this, do you feel like that rings true for the movie? Are there things that you agree or disagree with? So
say that last sentence.
So especially the points he says Del, we feel, was born with empathy, and then he lists off what his evidence is.
I'd agree with that one, but say the last sentence.
Neil, on the other hand, depends on his credit cards and self-reliance. He says Neil spends the movie trying to peel off from Del and failing.
Sure,
Del
agreed.
spends the movie having his feelings hurt and then coming through for Neil anyway.
It's interesting that both of these characters are in sales in one way or another, right? Like Neil and Del, are those the names? I keep wanting to say Steve Martin and John Candy, but we can say Neil and Del. Yeah, so
that's easier.
The Steve Martin character, though, he's in like the Fifth Avenue, New York City, designing magazine ads to sell cosmetics to rich people or whatever. Whereas John Candy, he's on the ground, like actively selling to people. And it is interesting to see that contrast of personalities, that they can be technically basically in the same field, but the skill set for tricking rich people into buying makeup versus the skill set for tricking, roadside motel managers into buying shower curtain rings can be very different skill sets.
Or random people in the bus stop.
Earrings were
that they're earrings.
Yeah. That was probably one of my favorite scenes. I just thought that was really hilarious. Yeah, I think the part. So I think that 80% of that rings true, especially his statement towards the end. I think the part that I disagree with is this Del, we feel, was born with empathy. Because I felt very much in the movie like and sometimes when I'm watching a movie because Philip told me to watch it, I have this reaction to the movie where I become almost rebellious to the writer's intent
what do you got
of what
for
I'm
me,
supposed
movie?
to feel. You know what I mean? I'll see what the movie is wanting me to feel. I'll figure that out, and then I'll start poking holes and reasons why I shouldn't feel that way.
And John Hughes movies
as
in
the
particular,
moviegoer does,
as movie viewers do. So I guess this is Trevor works out his problems on the podcast. No, I'm just kidding. But it felt like Del's character was supposed to be annoying but likable.
Yes.
And the thing about it was, with Roger Ebert saying like this empathetic, like that he is just a good person at heart. But there's a lot of things that happen in the film that I think really...
He's a sweetheart, but I don't know about empathy.
Yeah, really don't meet with empathy. So like taking off your shoes and socks in a plane, I think is a almost heinous act.
Soaking your socks and underwear in a shared bathroom sink, I
completely
don't know about that.
Unempathetic. So like I think a better term to describe Del's character would be boundless. He doesn't quite understand the boundary between himself and other people and how to respect that. And so he constantly invades into other people's space, both for reasons that are altruistic, like helping them, even when they don't want his help, and for reasons of his own personal comfort. Both happen, but he's really just, he doesn't understand boundaries in a sense.
I'd say he's more oblivious than empathetic. And I also wasn't sure. I actually remember when I read that article before I sent it to you, I was like, did he really come through for Steve Martin all that much? He was kind of a burden on him almost. There was a time or two for sure when he came through, but there was also the 80% of the time where he was just scuttling everything.
You do kind of wonder if he had just slept in the airport at the beginning,
yes,
would all of this had happened? You know what I mean?
I was the flight would have eventually happened.
Yeah. He takes a look at the guy who's curled up on his jacket or something, literally just on the floor in the Wichita airport. And you're like, oh man, that guy is really slumming it. But then you see the lows that he reaches.
Then he spends 2 or 3 days on the road in the worst circumstances.
Yeah. That guy, looking back on it, it's no, this guy was in luxury.
Yeah. I guess the question is empathy the same thing as kindness, right? Because I think Del is a very kind character, Like he does seem to be
agreed.
sensitive to people's needs and want to meet them. But
I feel like he's sensitive. I don't know exactly about if I would say he was kind though.
okay.
Like I think there
He's
are times
gentle.
when he is gentle. He does, and he cares. But the other thing too is we find out like part of the reason he cares is also because he's lonely. Like he doesn't. It's not necessarily motivated from a like.
It's not like altruistic.
Yeah, it's not just like I am from the goodness of my heart and from my position want to help this person in need. So much it is like he latches on almost in a codependent way to this person who he feels like because he stole his cab accidentally and the guy called him on it. Now they have a relationship, and so then it's like, how do I mean? I think there is a sense. I don't want to be too harsh on him because, like, yeah,
you don't want to overthink an '80s comedy too much.
Well, but here we are in the substance. This is what we do.
I do think this is a pretty mean-spirited movie for like 80 to 90% of its running time. Like it's just kind of like these two characters are obnoxious each in their own ways, and they kind of deserve each other. Right. Like it's very little of your enjoyment of this movie really comes in sympathizing with the characters beyond just like that looked like it hurt, it's very much like these two characters getting what they deserve. At least that's my take on it.
I just thought it was pretty funny.
But why is it funny though? Right. I mean, like how does that
it's why it's like emotional slapstick. It's just gut punch after burnt down car and getting robbed and like just all of the bad things. Not obviously like it's a piece of fiction, but just like he had a car rented and it wasn't there. He should have just been able to have a car, but like he tore up his ticket and lost his cool on the rental car woman, and just it kept going downhill.
Well, and then it's this sense of he gets what he deserves because he's a jerk to everyone, And I don't know. I mean, there maybe there is a lesson there of Dell, whatever his faults, knows how to make friends, right? He knows how to get people on his side, and Neil just doesn't.
I guess in that way I can relate to him, Trevor.
Well, honestly, like he's kind of sells, he's out on the road, like he's kind of, he's definitely like, if you want to put a harmonic triad on it, like he's positive outlook, right?
Sure.
Dell is positive outlook almost to toxic levels of positivity, like just, oh, this is so funny, this is going to turn out right. Like he never, and that's another reason why I think he fails to be an empathetic character because he tries to be so positive and everything, he really fails to enter into the real pain of what Neil's going through and doesn't really understand it, or at least doesn't communicate that well. But
and if you want to psychoanalyze him, he seems to be in denial of his own pain for most of the film as well. Yeah,
exactly. No, I think that's exactly right. And I felt like that was the part of the movie that like brought it around a little bit for me, was like kind of coming to the end and you see this kind of redemption arc where they finally, especially Neil, finally just wakes up to, this is the situation I'm in.
He has this little like 80s comedy Kaiser Soze moment where like he puts it all together.
Yeah. He finally pays attention. He finally pays attention to all the stuff that he's been so focused on, just his own goal and his destination, that he missed the things around him, and maybe that's why when he's sitting on the bus and it's his turn to start the song, he sings a song that he only has to know the words to, and nobody's
that
with
made
him,
me laugh a whole lot too.
Yeah,
this was a funny movie, guys. I don't know what you guys are talking about.
I'm not saying it's not funny.
I
think it's a mean-spirited kind of humor. It's
no, you're right. But like, so at the end where Neil finally realizes the situation that Dell is in and has compassion. Like, I think that is honestly
talk about that. Just put that on the table there, Trev.
Yeah, let's talk about that. Talk about that moment of compassion that happens.
I also didn't know if that was a joke. The picture he carried around, she was real old looking. Like, she looked like she was in her 70s. Yeah,
dude,
but like she
80s,
looked like
bro.
she was in her 70s.
No.
Maybe that was like
That's
a
what 40 looked like back in the
50s or
80s,
60s.
No.
Like,
She did not look like she was
I
in her
watched it
70s, my
twice
dude.
in the
You know,
last
I'm
month.
sure what it was
She looked old.
someone told someone in the prop department to find the most ridiculous photo of someone's wife they could, and that was what they found. They went to Goodwill or something, and that was the
picture of his wife looked like a grandmother.
It did not look like a grandma.
Listeners, tweet at us, hit us up on the
There is
website,
not
let us know what you
a gray
think.
hair on the woman's head. She did not look like a grandma.
All right.
My
Wonder if she
gosh.
credit.
But no, like, so well, what you find out is, so this is, I guess, the spoilers. Dell's essentially just a homeless guy. Like, you know what I mean? Like, he doesn't. He goes from hotel room to hotel room. Maybe he sleeps in his car.
he's a peripatetic salesman.
Maybe
he's a traveling salesman.
He's a peripatetic salesman. Yeah, sure. Yeah, like he doesn't. Yeah, he doesn't have a place. You know.
And when he says, he hasn't been home in years, he was telling the truth.
I don't know.
He doesn't have
I don't know if this is what we're talking about right now, but to me, that was like kind of a huge plot hole. That creates huge plot holes in the story of like, why does he want so badly to get to Chicago? I don't understand.
That's true.
Has anyone thought about that?
Well, he's pretty laissez-faire about it. He doesn't care quite as much.
I think he wants
to help Neil get there.
So exactly. Like,
to be with his family, because
his desperation is
so
to
when
hold
he
on to
almost
this
runs
relationship
Neil over,
because
was that like planned? Was he like, I'm going to act like I'm going to almost run him over just so I can?
I thought that was just happenstance.
So that was just accidental. Yeah, we're supposed to believe in the fiction
because it's a 90-minute movie and they need to be reunited, so he had to be the one driving the car.
Yeah. So it's ridiculous, but yeah, at the end of the day,
right after Steve Martin insults the taxi guy's manhood, also very funny.
Oh man, yeah, and then ends up on the helium,
gets punched in the face and lifted up by his genitals.
It's brutal. It's a brutal scene. Yeah, but yeah, he finally gets to Chicago and puts two and two together that Dell doesn't have a place, and he welcomes him in. He finally sees what's in front of him, and it is a testimony in a sense to you can get so narrow-sighted. And I think to Roger Ebert's point about like the individualism, like Neil is very self-reliant, whereas Dell is very like he needs others to make do. And that's part of the reason why they have their conflict. But if anybody has like, I guess, a kind of redemption arc, it's not Dell, who really doesn't change in the film. He is who he is.
Correct.
I mean, he says as much. I like who I am. But Neil kind of has this moment where he realizes that it's not just all about his own individual, what he's trying to pursue and him getting to his goal, but there's actually someone here that needs him, that he could help out, and he wants to. Because I think actually Neil fundamentally is a somewhat, maybe even empathetic character and caring character once he's able to get, you know what I mean? Like, it takes him a while because he's so dead focused on achieving this logistical goal of, get to the place. And I think it almost speaks to just, you talk about this on your podcast, Luke, like systems and society and how we get plopped into this thing. And now like we're doing things that maybe as an individual, if we just really had full freedom, we wouldn't want to do. But because of the system and the reality that we're in, we act in ways. And I felt like a lot of his anger came out of that. Mm-hmm. He was just so frustrated with all of his situation that he's plopped in. But when he finally gets to where he's going and like has a second that he thinks, he's really able to extend that compassion, and he stops thinking just about himself when he starts thinking about the person next to him.
Well, that's kind of interesting too, because when he thought he was in the clear when he first got on the train of the planes, trains, and automobiles, which I also kind of appreciated how like that was the order of operations that they attempted in the film.
Yeah.
The plane thing got jacked up. He had a terrible hotel experience, but then he got a train. He's like, I'm going to be good. And then he was just like talking to the girl next to him. He was like a happy camper and actually like focused positively on someone else. To kind of your point. he operated that way both times when like things were going well for him.
Hmm.
He couldn't, like, in a situation of stress, he could only think about himself. But like when things were going well, he was kind of able to think about other people.
Yeah. And even still, like, you know, in that scene, he hasn't fully completed his transformation because he's still trying to ignore Del. And it's almost like being there for that person who needs you, even when it's inconvenient, you know, even when you keep tripping over their stupid trunk of garbage that they're lugging around everywhere.
It's certainly not as dramatic, but he does kind of have like a Thanksgiving Scrooge experience. Like, oh, I'm a changed man. Like, I can kind of like see the good in people, and like I want to be more generous. Like, just because he realized
he learns the true meaning of Thanksgiving.
Yeah. Just like he's like, oh, okay, man, this guy doesn't have a home. His wife passed away, and he's just kind of like existing. Like, I feel bad for him, and that's kind of his thing.
Yeah, and I think that gets to some of the stuff that what Ebert said about the film and how it really is about like not judging a book by its cover. There's initial impressions maybe they got of each other and we get of both the characters, but as you learn more about each one of them through all of their mishaps in the film, you, especially for Del's character, once you understand his backstory, it puts so many things in context. Like, you know, I found him genuinely annoying through most of the film. Like, just
you're supposed to,
just very unfunnily annoying. This man needs help. Like this man just needs help. Like that was my feeling the whole time. But then at the end you realize why. You know,
and he actually does. That's part of that's part of the character.
Yeah. And once you realize that, then it's like, oh, okay, like you start to have compassion on some of the other stuff because, and I feel like that's so true in our culture in general. If I guess I'm trying to extrapolate a point here, is once we really humanize people by learning their history, by learning their backstory, by hearing a little bit about their story, even people who annoy us or we don't agree with them or we find their views noxious to us or, you know, toxic or whatever, when you hear their backstory, when you hear a little bit about how they got there, when you hear a little bit about where they came from, it humanizes them, and then all of a sudden you can have compassion on that situation and really see them, I don't know, maybe closer to the way God sees them.
So Luke, now between your 3 viewings, didn't love it, liked it, where are you kind of at now?
I could see watching it again. John Hughes can be kind of a mixed bag for me. Like there are films of his that I love and films that I really can't stand. Like I don't think I could ever sit through Weird Science again. That's just not a good movie.
Hit us with I'm curious, like as a movie guy, like what are your, like I really like Ferris Bueller, and that's kind of it for me.
Ferris Bueller might be the apex of his work. I mean, Home Alone holds up really well still, I think, which he didn't direct. He wrote it.
Did he?
Yeah, he wrote
that? Or did Chris Columbus write that?
wrote it. Chris Columbus directed it. But yeah, aside from Ferris Bueller and...
I'm one of those like Neanderthals. I kind of like Home Alone 2 more.
I mean, because Home Alone 2 is just like the same thing, but more violent.
I just watched it more as a kid. I have more nostalgia for it.
There's a theme here.
What else do you need, right? I could definitely see watching Planes, Trains, and Automobiles again. Like, as I said, I do think that it takes kind of that vaudeville Odd Couple thing and cranks it up to 11 in ways that are a little off-putting to me sometimes, but I mean these are 2 brilliant actors and they both give really excellent performances in the film, so it's easy to see what people love about it.
Would you give it a recommend?
You know, if someone was talking to me and said I want something Thanksgiving themed to watch on Thanksgiving, it would be in my top 2 of the 3 Thanksgiving movies I know. So
say this and Charlie Brown. I mean, both of I completely agree with Luke. Like both of these guys are firing on all cylinders, but also I'm a big movie guy and a big movie tradition guy. I probably would not quite do this annually, but I mean, I would watch it again for sure. I would show it to people, kind of gauge their reactions. now that we have this, maybe just share with hey, take a listen to the podcast. Let us know what you think. But I mean, I think it's genuinely funny. And I think especially watching it a second time, kind of knowing it, like, I feel like you can laugh more because you know, like, these are two guys that are just kind of like struggling. Like, these are two guys that are floundering, that like, it's going to be okay. Like, these are two guys in pain that are doing their best in ways, but like, it will ultimately end up being okay.
Yeah, for me, I've gone back and forth on this a lot, and what Luke said about his first to second viewing almost got me to the point to think, maybe, I don't know, maybe I'd recommend it, because I've been sitting on the fence on it like, for 24 hours. I think I'm gonna go back though to I'm really not feeling it, like not 100%. I wouldn't say a hard recommend. Here's what I would recommend though. What I would recommend is at least getting a plot synopsis and then reading the Roger Ebert review of the movie, because that review, man, it's emotional. The movie is like a 3 stars. I know he gave it 4.
4 is the top for Roger.
But the movie in my book is 3 stars out of 5. But the review was 5 out of 5 stars. That was a really great review. It took me on an emotional journey in a way that the film did not.
Just for Trevor and anybody listening, Roger Ebert's scale was a 4-star scale, so that was the top for him.
There you go.
But yeah, I gave it a 4 out of 5 stars on my Letterboxd, watching it a couple times here. Like, it's not like an incredible, like, perfect movie, but I think it's very funny and very humane when you look at it. Like, I don't think the movie was intended, like I said, to be this like major statement, but I think the characters reflect true things enough that I could see this growing on me
for sure
the older I get.
Excellent.
And it's an interesting time capsule of transportation in a bygone era.
Transportation, communication, cars, hairstyle, like also people being together in an elevator. How many COVID freak out moments did you guys have? Like when the old dude was leaning his head on him on the airplane and then just like coughed right in his face.
That was disgusting.
That was absolutely
hilarious.
Going through my head
different.
When I watched that scene. I was like, wow. COVID has definitely made me hyper aware of how disgusting many of the things we do day to day are.
Oh yeah. Yeah, that I will say there are moments in the movie that hit different in 2021 for sure. Well,
not even COVID. I mean, it got me both times I watched it this last month. You know me, Trev. I'm pretty resilient. I can handle a lot of things and uncomfortable travel situations. But just sleeping in a puddle of beer after you take a shower, like that's...
I think I would have slept on the floor at that point, personally.
Well, Trevor knows. I would have slept on the dresser.
You would have started with like putting the chairs together. Yeah, that's where we would have started. Yeah, exactly. That way there wouldn't be any those aren't pillows awkward situations going on.
Also funny.
Awesome. Oh man. Well, gentlemen, fun time talking about this. Luke, we have a segment that we do regularly on the show, and we love to toss it to our guests whenever we have guests on the show. What's something substantive? I mean, we say substance shout-outs. It doesn't have to be profound. It can just literally be something that you're enjoying recently, a TV show you watch. It could be a cartoon or something. Music, movies, a book you read, article you like, the blog.
Consumable piece of culture.
Literally anything of culture that has been relevant or for you recently.
Well, as a man of culture, I'll say this. Probably the best thing I've experienced in the last month or so was a book I read. It was a little obscure, so hopefully I don't lose anyone talking about this. But it was a young adult novel by an author named Martine Leavitt. And it was called Calvin. Am I right in assuming you guys haven't heard of this book?
I have not.
That's the great thing about substance shout-outs.
Yeah. So it was. It's this novel about this kid. His name is Calvin, and he is a diagnosed schizophrenic. It's a really weird book. The kid was born the same day that the last Calvin and Hobbes strip ran.
Okay.
And so he's got this weird obsession with Calvin and Hobbes, and he's convinced that his fate is controlled by Bill Watterson, the author of Calvin and Hobbes. So yeah, he's been living with schizophrenia. He's got an actual imaginary friend who's a tiger named Hobbs that won't leave him alone, and he's trying to get rid of. He's 17 years old now, I should say. So this is a kid on the cusp of adulthood, ready to stop having this imaginary friend, but the imaginary friend won't go away. And so this kid lives in southern Ontario, and of course, Bill Watterson lives in Cleveland, which is right across the lake right across Lake Erie from southern Ontario. So somehow this kid gets it in his head that what he needs to do is walk across the lake. It's the dead of winter. The lake is frozen over. He needs to walk across Lake Erie and convince Bill Watterson to draw one more comic strip.
Okay.
That will show Calvin as like this well-adjusted, non-schizophrenic teenager, and he's convinced that will solve all his problems. So that's kind of the premise of the book. It's kind of this weird mix of like dreamy fairy tale and like gritty survival story as he walks across Lake Erie. Yeah, and
Interesting.
he's with his childhood friend, whose name is Susie, of course, who has insisted on coming with him. And the whole time he's not really sure if she's a real person or if she's just another imaginary friend, which makes it really, I don't know, kind of romantic and bittersweet and melancholy all at once. It's definitely one of those, like, as a novelist, I've published one novel. It was one of those books that I read it and I was like, dang, I wish I'd written this, because this is really good stuff. So that's my recommend, Calvin by Martine Liebert.
And listeners, according to Amazon, it's under 200 pages.
Yeah,
so
it's a quick read. It's a fun read.
Awesome.
Interesting. And tell us briefly, so obviously we're going to get to plugs here in a second. Tell us about your book. Was that a horror book? I heard you say on the show.
Yeah, I've published 2 books.
Okay.
One, like, that they have nothing at all to do with each other. I'm an unmarketable disaster. So I published one novel. It was a psychological thriller. The title, Ophelia Alive, A Ghost Story is the subtitle. And that I published that with a just kind of a little mom and pop publisher in Cincinnati back in 2016. The publisher has since shut down, but I did just kind of put it up on Amazon as like a self-published book. So you can still read it. You can still, if you have Kindle Unlimited, you can read it for free.
Yes, you can.
And
Indeed.
I have one other book, which was a nonfiction book. It was called Murder Bears, Moonshine, and Mayhem: Strange Stories from the Bible to Leave You Amused, Bemused, and Hopefully Informed. And that came out from HarperCollins Christian back in 2020.
Very nice. Oh, boy. Luke, I don't know if you're aware here. Ophelia Alive, if you get it on Kindle there, it is 666 kilobytes.
Oh, wow.
Kind of concerning. Nice
Speaking
work there for your horror story.
Did you plan that for your ghost story?
That was not planned. I will say, though, the other book, my quote-unquote Christian book, I was checking its Amazon stats once, and it was like right at number 666 on the religious humor charts. So
wow. What is obviously the sub? I really like long subtitled books. Can you give us the elevator pitch beyond
for Murder
what the
Bears?
Subtitle's clearly saying?
Yeah, it's
yes.
It's just a overview of all the weirdest parts of the Bible, arranged by topic, with lots of poop jokes and lots of quasi-academic historical notes as well. It is put out by a Christian publisher, but written more with a general audience in mind. So really, anyone who wants to learn more about the Bible and or laugh, it's for you.
Very nice.
There are some really funny things in the Bible, for sure. And
very true.
The murder bears. I'm guessing you're referring to the scene where the prophet's walking and the kids are like making fun of its bald head or whatever, and he summons.
Just talking with some people about that the other day, actually.
Yes.
What a scene!
It's very
Second Kings.
Elisha
curses some kids, and bears come out from the woods and maul them. Every 12-year-old boy's favorite Bible passage,
Yeah. Yeah, be careful who you joke on.
And I think we mentioned this off the air. I don't know if it'll make the beginning of the show, but your podcast Changed My Mind is really, really enjoyable.
Thank
show.
you.
I
Yeah,
love the premise.
I do a podcast. So if you're listening to this, you probably like podcasts. Maybe check mine out. It's called Changed My Mind with Luke T. Harrington. There is another podcast out there that's just called Changed My Mind because I didn't do my due diligence in making sure the name was unique. But you want the one with my name and my picture on the cover. And it's an interview podcast where I interview people who have changed their minds about big, important things, I like to say. And it's mostly about the process of changing your mind, so we don't typically get deep into the weeds of like discussing nitty gritty stuff so much as I just kind of invite people to tell their story and why they changed their mind. And we do everything from politics and religion to like really little stuff like pop culture and punctuation. We did an episode on the Oxford comma, for instance.
Ooh, dig it.
Yeah. So,
well, how did the switch go on that one?
He went from anti to pro.
I like it.
I've actually got an unreleased episode. It's in the can. I haven't put it out yet. That's also about the Oxford comma,
the other way?
but the guest went the other direction from pro to anti. So
that's a shame.
Yeah,
that's a shame. But I'll listen to them both with rapt interest. And actually, Luke, so the Substantive Cinema we try to do once a month. We're super grateful you came and joined us. Doors open. We'd love to have you come back. I think because we talk a lot about obviously religion and culture, and we talk a good bit about like just politics and civic engagement. I would love to hear just about your experiences and observations about how people change their mind and things of that nature. So the door's open if you ever have a lighter week sometime in the future and you'd be willing to come back.
Yeah, for sure.
I loved especially hearing the episode where you were interviewed by your producer, and just the way that you can kind of step back and view it as like, what is this saying? Like, it's almost, am I over glorifying changing your mind? Like, am I, why do people do this? Why do people not do this? What, how does this all happen? And then coming down to like this kind of man as a community creature in a way, like you had some really awesome thoughts on that I was like, this is great stuff, because it's like you can go into it and be self-critical in a way that's just totally like honest to the situation and view and stuff. So I loved that. I was like, I
really appreciate that. Thank you.
Good material.
Yeah. It is very much a listen at your own risk sort of podcast. There's really nothing off limits. We talk about almost everything on the show, so be warned. But
good. Where else can people find you? We've talked a lot about how do you prefer, like, obviously check out the podcast, subscribe if you're interested in that, but where do you spend your most time, and where can people find you most easily?
Probably the best way is to tweet at me. It's just at Luke T. Harrington. That's HARRINGTON.
That T's important.
It is important. Yeah. Don't forget the T. So yeah, you can do that. You can go to my website, which is luketharrington.com. I need to update it because there's some old stuff there, but you can also find both of my books there. You can find a link to my Substack there, and a link to my podcast. So
excellent.
Nice.
Well, Luke, thanks for joining us for this Substantive Cinema conversation. We appreciate your time, and we'll look forward to maybe having you on in the future.
All right. Sounds good.
All right, Phil. So planes, trains, and automobiles.
Thanks for sitting through it, Trev. I thought you might be a little reticent to it, but I thought I'd win you over a little bit more than I did.
I think
we'll see next year.
Did maybe more also than I completely let on. Like it wasn't horrible. Like it certainly wasn't one where I felt like I needed to be like, nah, let's not release this episode. I thought,
which listeners, there are three? There are 3 movies we've watched and we've never recorded on.
Yeah. Are there 3 that I vetoed?
One, hilariously, Kevin, that was one of his picks. One of the ones that you vetoed. And I was like, yes. If we get you on, you suggest it. And then it would be even funnier if you guys just had to do it from memory. And it would be more satisfying if you had to watch it again. Either one of those would be a win.
Oh, my man is a troll. My man is a troll, dear listener.
He's like, I'd love to do Pan's Labyrinth or Taste of Cherry. And I was like, yes.
Oh, okay. Okay.
Anyway, so you liked it more than you let on, perhaps?
I
didn't hate
enjoyed
it.
our conversation about it. Let's put it that way. I enjoyed our conversation about it, and I thought I would. Like, it's
You're not going to watch it next year with Christina again, necessarily?
Oh no, I'm fairly certain this is not Christina's cup of tea, and
Okay.
it's not really, wasn't really my favorite. So probably not going to start like a bi-yearly Thanksgiving tradition with it.
No, Paul Blart Mall Cop 2 is a much more rewarding tradition with the McElroys.
But you know, I appreciate going on the journey. I appreciate the listeners going on the journey with us, and as they do, especially as we're
rounding out the year here.
Yeah, round out the year. It's been I mean, looking back on, I guess we'll have an episode where we do this and look back on everything that's gone on, but still a lot for listeners to partner on us on in the future, and lots of exciting stuff coming up, right, Phil?
Yeah, it's been a great year. We're really proud of everything we've done solo and the guests we've been able to bring you guys. So we just want to thank you for riding with us, and especially those of you guys who have joined as Anchor subscribers at the $5 or $10 a month level. The show is always going to be free. There may be more things in the future that we add, but we're always committed to bringing you a high quality free show here at The Substance. But like we said, if that's something you're interested and able in doing, we always appreciate folks who can do that. You can find that in the show notes link, or if monthly support on Anchor is not really your cup of tea, what you guys can do is send us individual tips. If you're just feeling the holiday Thanksgiving spirit, where you get something at the end of the year, you're like, no, I've never really signed up. I'll throw them a couple of bucks. You can do that on Cash App at $ the Substance Pod. And you help us. You guys are the ones who gave us the website, thesubstancepod.com, where you can go and interact with this episode. Maybe we can kind of rope Luke into engaging in some of the comments. If you guys have wanted to engage with any of the things he said, or you checked out his podcast and liked it, let us know in the comments on the website. We've got some plans for 2022, which is kind of crazy to say. Like 2022 is on the horizon, Trev. How does that feel to think about?
Dude, I feel like we're maybe just starting to emerge from the time soup that has been the 2020 and
like
2021
COVID time.
pandemic.
Like,
yeah.
2021 really does feel like the B side of 2020. Like, it really feels like 2020 part 2.
Yeah, somehow it's like we entered some wormhole in March of 2020, and we've kind of like started to emerge from here. I wonder if this is what like Noah felt like the first couple of days out the ark. It was like, the heck happened? What time is it? Like, what day is it?
And then now we got daylight savings time. My boys are very confused.
Oh my goodness. As Philip mentioned, website is substancepod.com.
Substancepod.com.
In a similar vein, you can send us an email at thesubstancepod@gmail.com. And if you really just want to do the old telephonic style of communication, like they do in planes, trains, and automobiles, if that's got you transported back to a day when people had home phones. This is not a home phone. It is very much voice over IP line.
It's an internet phone, actually. It's very futuristic.
And it does have 10 digits, and they are 913-703-3883.
Boom.
Give us a call. Let us know your thoughts. Fun having you here with myself, one of your co-hosts, Trevor Aiken, and my friend, Philip Marinello.
It's just us today.
Just us. Vince is off, as you have heard
Vince.
or not
We
heard.
didn't even, like, we hope you're enjoying your time off.
Yeah, man.
You deserve it.
For real. Killed it on the website. Has been bringing the heat in the comments.
Whenever you can get away before you have kids, do it.
Do that. Free advice for you, our listeners, and maybe you'll hear some more next week
on The Substance.
Peace.
Award-winning. Oh God, golly, I'm gonna reset. Luke T. Harrington.
In a similar vein, you can find us to send an email. Blah blah blah. Let's try again. In a similar vein, is very much voice over IP line.
It's an internet phone, actually. It's very futuristic.
But it does have 9 digits, and then they are 913-703.
10 digits?
And it does have 10 digits.